Welcome to the D2 Baseball Podcast, your top source for all things D2 Baseball. Before we jump into today's episode, I've got some exciting news. Are you looking to reach a passionate, engaged audience? We're now offering ad spots on our podcast. By advertising with us, you'll connect with thousands of dedicated D2 baseball fans, including players, coaches, and avid supporters. Here's why you should consider partnering with us. Targeted reach. Engage a specific audience that loves D2 baseball. High engagement. Our listeners are loyal and tuned in regularly. Affordable rates. Competitive pricing for all budgets. Flexible formats. Choose from pre-roll, mid-roll, or post-roll ads. Interested? Email us at diviibaseball@gmail.com to learn more and secure your spot. Let's hit it out of the park together. Thanks for considering this opportunity. Now, let's get to today's episode of the D2 Baseball Podcast. Welcome into the Division II Baseball Podcast. I'm Will Connerly alongside Robert Fry, and a very special episode today as we talk about some special individuals, those who had played for a Division II baseball team throughout their career or played for a team that is now a Division II. We're going to talk about some guys, some D2 athletes who not only are in the pros, and you can check out our most recent episode to talk about perhaps some of the guys that could be on this list in the future, those who got drafted in the 2024 Major League Baseball draft. But today, we're going to talk about D2 baseball players who have played in the show this season. The list is maybe more extensive than you would think. And Robert, it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about all of the guys who have got to play in the bigs at least a little bit this year. For any degree of playing in the bigs is a great accomplishment. Some guys have been up all year, and we've had some guys have their debuts this season. We'll talk all about it here on this podcast. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it will be a lot of fun, Will, and we're excited to show it to you, especially on the video side. Really excited. We put together all these clips for you of highlights of every player and some, interesting tidbits and how they're doing this season and things like that to make it really fun and really exciting. So this was really exciting to look at, and the information that we will provide you is through August 7th. So every player that's been called up and has stats through August 7th. So if you're watching this in the future, again, through August 7th, we'll update this as we go too, and we'll add in, we'll post an article on our website too of each player and kind of a picture of them, in their Division II school, plus a short video as well. Maybe clip these videos that are already clipped here within that. But excited about that. There are 50 players who have played in the MLB this season that have either played at a D2 when it was a D2 or at maybe a D1 or an NAIA when they were, but now are currently a Division II school, or on the flip side, a Division II school when they play, but now a Division I. We'll go through each one of those players, and we'll go one by one along the lines. And we'll start first with a guy who went to a Division II school that no longer exists, and one that was in the GMAC conference.
That's right. Alderson Broaddus spent 4 years there, and you've got Randy Dobnak, somebody who played for Alderson Broaddus from 2014 to 2017. And like you mentioned, a member of the GMAC. He has spent some time with the St. Paul Saints this year in AAA, along with the Twins in the majors, where to this point he's got 3 games and 4 2/3 innings under his belt so far this season. But he is the first player featured here. Getting to the show is certainly a great accomplishment, and the right-hander looking to see what he can do to continue to represent the GMAC at a high level.
Yeah, a guy who's had played a few years in the major leagues and was a key part in that Twins postseason run, or when the Twins were in the postseason a couple of years ago. And, here's some of his highlights from 2024. Currently on the roster, it was recently called up, so now a part of that Twins bullpen. But, yeah, spent a lot of time in St. Paul, but he started his career back in 2019 and is now – so think about that. He played at Alderson Broaddus in 2017, and then 2 short years later, he's already up in the MLB, and now he's working on his 5th season, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, I take that back. He was out of the majors since 2021 and then came back to the majors in 2024. And again, here's some of his highlights that we have for him as well. So excited to see that. But yeah, Randy Dobnak starts us off. And now we go to a school that does exist and is a Division II. And we go out west to Azusa, California. And that's Azusa Pacific, Will, and Josh Staumont.
Yes, Staumont was at Azusa back in 2015, and just like Randy Dobnak, also somebody who has played this season with the Twins, and he's been a big player this season. 25 games so far. He's got a 3.7 ERA and 24 1/3 so far tossed this season. Has pitched sometime at St. Paul as well, and has played for a couple of franchises after going in the second round back in 2015.
Yeah, a guy who pitched in the Royals or with the Royals and now is currently on the Twins, a guy that when he was called up was reaching triple digits, no problem. I think he's dipped a little bit in velocity, but still can throw in the high 90s. A key reliever in this Minnesota Twins organization, as you can see there. He's on the video side, he's striking out Giancarlo Stanton, which is pretty cool. He's also striking out Corey Seager, which is also pretty cool to see, running up that fastball up to 98 miles per hour. So, again, Azusa Pacific from 2015, a guy with major league experience, and we know that as well with their current manager being Kirk Neuenhuis, who spent a few years in the big leagues as well. So,
yeah,
that is the story on Josh Staumont. Now we go to another guy with more years in the big leagues, 13 to be exact. And we're excited to talk about that here in a second.
Oh, yes.
We're going to collide.
This guy was, Robert, really impressive. I mean, you talk about what he's been able to do throughout his career. And it's been a lengthy one. To be in the show for over a decade, that's a great accomplishment, and that's what Yan Gomes has done. I mean, he was a 10th rounder back in 2009. He's played for 5 different teams in the professional ranks, and out of Barry University, he's really impressed. He played a couple seasons at Tennessee and then went to Barry, where he nearly had 100 runs driven in. It was a school record at the time, and he's been spending time with the Cubs this season. Hitting a .154 this year, but he's enjoyed a long major league career in his 13th big league season.
Yeah, and a guy who has, played for a few teams, been a part of key postseason runs. He was a part of that Cleveland team that made it to the World Series in 2016. So, and yeah, a guy that spent 1 year at Barry and made the most of it with 92 driven in, and that's really exciting to see there as well. So Yan Gomes, one of those guys who is on this list, especially with the amount of guys that we have. So, and now we're going on to the second Barry University player and someone who pitched at Barry from 2012 to 2013 and a current Colorado Rocky, and that's Tyler Kinley.
Yeah, and when we look at these guys and look where D2 players get drafted, some of them go high, some of them go low, but I mean, Kinley, a 16th rounder, he's played for 3 different teams, and out of Barry University, he was a guy who he just continued to show that he's got that pro potential, and he's logged 50 innings this year with the Rockies and has spent this season in the show 4-1. 52 appearances. He's gotten a lot of work, and we had a couple of great years in the Sunshine State Conference back in 2012 and 2013. And I know the pride of Miami Shores, Florida, certainly is impressed with what he's been able to do in the big leagues across 3 different professional organizations.
Yeah, and being a part of that Rocky bullpen now, a consistent part of that Rocky bullpen, makes it a very interesting guy. Again, a guy who's thrown quite a bit, 52 appearances so far this season for the Colorado Rockies. ERA is not necessarily what he wanted to be, but then again, he does play in that Chris Rocky Mountain Air. Made his major league debut all the way back in 2018 with the Miami Marlins, or excuse me, I believe he started with the Minnesota Twins before going to the Miami Marlins. Or no, I believe I had it flipped around. He was drafted by the Marlins, so he started with the Marlins. Now he's with the Twins. Then he went to the Rockies. So Tyler Kinley, another guy out of Barry University that is currently playing in the MLB. And now we go to the next player who's currently playing in the MLB. And that's a guy who had a lot of success there in the postseason, especially deep in the postseason with the Diamondbacks, and that's Brandon Pfaadt, a guy who was at the Division II Bellarmine when they were a Division II at the time. Now they've moved up to the Division I ranks, but a guy who definitely made a name for himself in the postseason.
He did last year. He really burst on the scene. I mean, he was excellent at Bellarmine, one of the many guys on this list that I had the privilege to see play in person while they were Division II athletes. And you could tell right away with the electric arm and slider that he has, he had a lot of potential, and he's been living up to it after getting selected in the 5th round back in 2020. He's continued to move up through the organization with the Diamondbacks. And yeah, you mentioned it. He really got on the map last year in the postseason when the Diamondbacks made their run to the World Series. But from 2018 to 2020, he was excellent at Bellarmine. And man, he's been pretty good this season as well. 6-6, 137 innings logged, and he's got 23 starts and a sub-4 ERA. He's putting together being a consistent starter in the big leagues. Brandon Pfaadt, pretty electric fastball in the mid to upper 90s at times when he can top out, and he's got a really good slider as well. So one of the names on this list that I think you're going to continue to talk about, a guy who could be a pretty accomplished starting pitcher in the big leagues for some time.
Yeah, and a guy who made his major league debut a year ago and ultimately pitched in the World Series in Game 3, now is performing very well. As you see some of his quality starts here, especially most recently against Cleveland, a team in first place nonetheless. So excited to see what continues there with Mr. Pfaadt as we continue on now and go to Belmont Abbey, a guy who spent 2 years there transferring from Division I Gardner-Webb, and that's a guy by the name of Emilio Pagan, a very accomplished reliever here in Major League Baseball.
Absolutely. Pagan, he has been a little bit of a journeyman. You talk about his collegiate career at Belmont Abbey and what he was able to do after that, getting selected in the 10th round back in 2013. He's played for 6 different teams, and a guy who, you know, he really was a standout at Belmont Abbey, going from Gardner-Webb and playing in the Big South to then go to Belmont Abbey and still get noticed, and then to have the accomplished career that he's had so far. It's been pretty cool to see for him so far this season. He's pitched 20 innings. That's a 4.43 ERA, and he's been a fixture in the Reds bullpen, along with spending some time in AAA Louisville as well.
Yeah, a guy who's been around since 2017, made his major league debut all the way back in 2017 with the Mariners, spent time with Oakland, the Rays, the Padres, the Twins, and now part of Cincinnati's bullpen as they try to make a postseason run. But yes, a guy who spent 2 years for the Crusaders in Belmont Abbey back in 2012 and 2013. As now we continue on to the next guy who is currently pitching for the Red Sox, and that's a guy by the name of Brennan Bernardino, who went surprisingly not to Cal State San Bernardino, but to
We're going to collide these two sports.
Dominguez
it's so fun.
Hills.
Yeah, he had a couple seasons with Dominguez Hills in the CCAA, and this season with the Red Sox, he's thrown nearly 40 innings out of the bullpen, and the ERA is just an eyelash above 3. He's been a pretty good back-end guy, had a good career at Dominguez Hills. As you see from the left side, has a decent angle, and Bernardino, a couple of organizations that he's played with, he was picked in the 26th round back in 2014, but enjoying some time as a reliever in the big leagues this season with Boston.
Yeah, and second year with Boston, he made his major league debut all the way back in 2022. Shouldn't say all the way back, but made 2 appearances with the Seattle Mariners before becoming a Boston Red Sox. Not sure what trade he was involved with, if any, to make him a current Red Sox. He was selected off waivers back in April of 2023 and has performed very well this year with the Red Sox. Obviously, with this arm slide, you can see there, striking a guy like Adley Rutschman and getting a guy like Bobby Witt, who's been on a tear all year long, to just look at a fastball. Obviously, he was sitting there that slider, but definitely a guy who's been a key cog for that Red Sox bullpen, and all started with being at Cal State Dominguez Hills. And speaking of Cal State Dominguez Hills, we'll go to a guy who has a ton of major league experience, as he's currently on his 9th major league team in his career, and that's a man by the name of Kevin Pillar.
Yeah, and second team this season.
Third of the National League.
He's played for a couple teams just this year alone with the Angels and White Sox, and he's known for great defensive plays, as you see right there. Just flies around in the outfield. He's provided a lot of value throughout his major league career with doing things like that, diving play, covering a lot of ground out there. Hitting .269 this year through 74 games with the Angels and White Sox combined. But at Cal State Dominguez Hills, he was there from 2008 to 2011. So they've got a couple guys in the show right now. And, yeah, like you said, probably one of the more recognizable names on this list, just because of the sheer fact that he's played for so many different teams, so many different major league markets. Certainly recognize the name of Kevin Pillar. And, again, a 32nd rounder back in 2011, still doing it. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, and what's pretty impressive is the fact that this man still holds the Division II record for hitting streak, as in 2010 he had a 54-game hitting streak with Dominguez Hills, and that still is held to this day. As speaking of hits, there's the video of him recording a walk-off earlier this season with the Angels as well. And, speaking of seeing him in person, I was able to see him in person this season while he was still a member of the White Sox, surprisingly. So it was fun to see him play. And, now he's, again, a storied career, 9th team. Let's see how long it lasts, because I know there's talks, especially interviews with him. This might be the end of the road for him. But, hey, he's still playing baseball as of now, and he's doing it at such a high level. And speaking of doing it at a high level, we'll go to a team that has always played at a high level, and he's been a key part of that, especially this season with how well he's pitched, and that's Alex Vesia.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably not the most recognizable name on this list, but he should be. I mean, you think about what he's done this year. He has some of the best numbers of any Division II player currently in the pros right now. Vesia, he has just been nasty. He's got a 1.86 ERA this year in nearly 50 innings out of that Los Angeles Dodgers bullpen, man. Yeah, and from at East Bay, he was there from 2015 to 2018. Dodgers saw something in him. He played for Milwaukee and then the Dodgers. He was drafted in 2018 in the 17th round, but was really good at East Bay when he was there from 15 to 18 in the CCAA. And again, he's got a sub-2 this season, been really good out of the back end of that bullpen.
Yeah, he's been really good, and he's been a key contributor, this season, but he's still been a key contributor in all their postseason runs as well. As, we're getting closer to that video of him, possibly pitching well in the postseason. But man, a guy from the left side who can run it up with velo like that and be able to get outs that way and get fired up like that makes it really fun. Here he is getting Acuna ground out, and this is an interesting play. Like, he just rolls it to Freddie Freeman to get the out. But Alex Vesia, a guy who does such a great job for that Dodgers bullpen, all started with Cal State East Bay, as now we transition to the next player, and that's Jared Koenig, who was a one-year member of Cal State Monterey Bay all the way back in 2016. He's been in the big leagues for 3 years, and he started his career in 2022 with the Oakland Athletics.
Yeah, that is an interesting journey for him. He started playing in Conference USA initially with Old Dominion, and then he transferred to Monterey Bay and played there for a year, and he was really good in 2016 with them, and he has been able to enjoy some time in the big leagues this season. He spent some time with AAA Nashville as well, but another lefty with a 2.06 ERA this season. He's been really good for the Brewers, first place Brewers bullpen, 8-3 as well in 43 2/3 innings thus far this season, after having his collegiate career go from Old Dominion to Monterey Bay, then to eventually play for the Milwaukee Brewers, and then doing pretty well from that left side also.
Yeah, throwing it up to the high 90s, you can see there. And, a guy who started his career with the Oakland Athletics in 2022, had a few amount of appearances there, didn't play in the major leagues in 2023 before becoming a big part of this, again, first place Milwaukee Brewer bullpen that is, in first place in the NL Central. And Jared Koenig is definitely a big part of it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Will.
Well, I was just going to say, he started his career at Central Arizona College, and it was interesting to me because he got drafted out of Central Arizona College in 2014, but opted to go to Old Dominion, then to Monterey Bay, and after Monterey Bay in 2016, a 22-year-old, he played in 4 different leagues in 2017, all in indie ball, just trying to get a chance to get back to affiliated baseball, which he did, and not back to, just to it in general, which he ultimately did in 2021. Like you mentioned, then cracking the majors in 2022. So an interesting path for him after getting drafted, not going, and then not getting drafted, going to indie ball, then ultimately getting signed. Everybody's journey is different as we go to our next guy on our list.
Yeah, and that's a guy who actually had another interesting journey, as well as a guy who played at Cal State San Bernardino all the way back from 2009 to 2011, and that's Aaron Brooks. And what makes his kind of career arc interesting is he made his major league debut all the way back in 2014, and yet he had to claw his way back after 2019. He spent time with Oakland and Baltimore before spending a couple of years in the KBO, in the Korean baseball organization in South Korea, before coming back in 2022 to pitch briefly for the Cardinals. Didn't pitch in the major leagues in 2023 to now he is back with Oakland in 2024, as you can see some of his highlights here.
Yeah, he's been a part of 4 different organizations, so a journey in the professional ranks, of 2011 ninth rounder. But San Bernardino from 09 to 11, like you mentioned, and he's been with Las Vegas AAA and the A's this season, thrown 26 2/3. Has gotten some good work in that bullpen as well. And another guy to highlight out on the West Coast, those pitchers in the Division II ranks from the West Coast, a lot of them end up having a lot of success and getting on to have long professional careers, and certainly hope the same for the righty Aaron Brooks.
And yeah, going on to another righty who's pitching in the Orioles organization, and that's a guy by the name of Tyler Wells, who's a part of the Baltimore Orioles.
Yeah, Tyler Wells, he was a 2016 15th rounder playing for Baltimore, another San Bernardino guy like you mentioned from 2014 to 2016. And with the O's this year, 15 and a third toss to 5.87 ERA. And again, another CCAA guy playing in the major leagues this season.
Yeah, a guy who had a lot more appearances last year, but he did ultimately fall to injury. He went 7-6 with a 3.64 ERA last year. Before that, in 2022, he went 7-7 with a 4.25 ERA. And ultimately, injury, I believe, ended his season, as he won't be coming back for the rest of this season. But yeah, like another guy from Cal State San Bernardino, if his areas, getting a guy like Mike Trout to strike out, that's always a good thing, no matter who you are.
Hard thing to do for sure.
Hard thing to do, but another guy who it's a hard thing to do in terms of hitting off of him. We're going to talk about current Minnesota Twins right-handed pitcher Joe Ryan.
Yeah, man, the Twins, multiple D2 arms in their bullpen right now. And Joe Ryan, you want to talk about being difficult to hit, a guy who was a 7th rounder in 2018. Twins saw something in him after playing at Stanislaus State, and he played at Northridge from 15 to 17, then went to Stanislaus and played in the CCAA, and he's been really good, Robert, this year, 7-7 with a 3.6 ERA. He's made 23 starts and has 135 innings long. He's been a pretty consistent starter for a pretty darn good team. That AL Central is pretty good, and the Twins have a good starter in Joe Ryan.
Yeah, a guy who has 147 strikeouts to just 23 walks in 135 innings. I know they're on the outside looking in. I believe they're in wild card contention, and he's been a big part of keeping them within that wild card contention as a key piece of that rotation, as he will continue on to be a key piece of that rotation, as he's part of I want to say he's part of a relatively infamous trade, with the Rays. So the Rays needed a bat in 2021, and they acquired Nelson Cruz from the Twins. And who did the Twins get for Nelson Cruz in exchange? Joe Ryan, and that trade has worked out dividends for the Twins in that case, as Cruz has been retired. He only played that season with the Rays, and now Joe Ryan is looking to have an excellent major league career with the Twins, how long ever it may be. But now we go on to the next player, going from the Twins now to the Cardinals, a guy who made his major league debut last year, and that's a guy by the name of Kyle Leahy, a part of that St. Louis Cardinals bullpen currently.
Yes, he's been really good. I think he hasn't got a lot of credit. He spent some time with AAA Memphis in the Cardinals organization, but with the Cardinals this year in the show, I mean, a 3.41 ERA and 37 innings. He's been great in their bullpen, like you mentioned, just cracked the show a year ago. And I know the pride of Colorado Mesa certainly is very proud that he is a pitcher from the RMAC playing in the show. Hard thing to do to get noticed out of that conference. What else is hard, Robert? Going 13-0 with about a 2 ERA. And that's what he did a few years back when he was playing with Colorado Mesa and ultimately led them to the College World Series. And another occasion where, I got to see that young man go when he was pitching against Quincy back in the 2017 College World Series, or D2 World Series, in Grand Prairie, Texas. But he was so good. He put up unreal numbers for anybody. And then in the RMAC, it was even crazier. But again, he's a guy that you wonder, does he have any future of being a rotation guy? He's been pretty good in the bullpen and has some really good stuff for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, and definitely, with head coach Chris Hanks, plenty of experience there. Well, when we talk about the next person, Hanks was definitely in attendance for his major league debut when he struck out Tim Anderson, as you saw earlier in the video. But now we go on to the next guy who's played for 3 teams. He made his major league debut in 2022, and that's a guy by the name of Bligh Madris.
Yeah, Bligh Madris, another Colorado Mesa guy. He was there from 15 to 17. and so overlapped for a season or two with Kyle Leahy, but he's hit .326 this year in 13 major league games. He's been with AAA Toledo, but also in 13 games in the show with the Tigers this year. He performed at a pretty high level in that small sample size of just a baker's dozen games, but nearly hitting .330, a 2017 ninth rounder who's been in the Pittsburgh and Houston organizations as well.
Yeah, and there's, video of him hitting his first major league home run, spent time with the Pirates, I mentioned in 2022, Houston in 2023, and now is a member of the Detroit Tigers, and he's mostly an everyday player for him too as well, so makes it very interesting to see that. But I got think about it this way, he plays in the RMAC in that type of conference. Now he's playing in one of the biggest parks in Major League Baseball and with the Detroit Tigers, but still nonetheless, I don't think Madris is complaining, since he can say he's a Major League Baseball player. As we go to the next school, and we stay within the RMAC, and we stay within the Detroit Tigers, we stay within the RMAC, but not quite to the Detroit Tigers. We talk about a guy who made his major league debut this past season, and that's a man by the name of Walter Pennington.
Yeah, Walter Pennington, a left-hander from the Colorado School of Mines out in Golden, Colorado, a guy who, still maintaining that rookie status because he hasn't got a ton of action this year. He pitched at Colorado Mines from 2017 to 2020, and he's been in the AAA organization most of this season with the Royals, and then was dealt to the Rangers at the deadline, which sent Michael Lorenzen over to Kansas City in that trade deadline deal. But he's thrown a couple games in the bigs this year, an inning and 2/3, and the lefty get him moved at the deadline this year. A guy who cracking the big leagues is pretty cool after not being drafted and now part of the Rangers organization, but somebody who in his junior year with the Mines, he had a 3.51 ERA in 92 1/3 innings, and that's really, really good in the RMAC, along with 4 complete games. And credit to him ultimately getting into the professional ranks, and now ultimately as a 26-year-old in the major leagues.
Yeah, as we continue on, and the last thing I'll say is Pennington his debut was roughly 20 minutes from where he lived. They're pitching against the Rockies, but now we go back to the Detroit Tigers and still in the RMAC, and we'll talk about a guy by the name of Beau Brieske.
Yeah, he is a guy who pitched at Colorado State Pueblo. He's been with the Tigers, like you mentioned, has thrown 38 innings this year for them. Also some time with AAA Toledo as well this season. But Brieske, somebody who was drafted back in the 2019 27th round, has an electric fastball, need that from the right side. And while Brieske certainly has that, another RMAC pitcher seeing some action now in the show.
Yeah, a guy who throws the ball at a very high level, and was a starter, I believe, in 2022 when he made his major league debut. 15 appearances, all starts. Now he's kind of shifted into a reliever role. 26 appearances, only 2 starts with a 4.93 with the Tigers currently in 2024. As now we go to the next player, and now we'll go to the NSIC and talk about, we're going to talk about brothers, Will.
We are going to talk about brothers, the Varlands. You've got Gus Varland and Louis Varland, both of them from Concordia University in St. Paul, Minnesota. And Gus Varland, somebody who is a 2018 14th rounder. The next year, then Louis was a 2019 15th rounder. But Gus, he's played with Milwaukee, and he's played with the Los Angeles Dodgers. And after spending the 2016 to 2018 season at Concordia St. Paul, he has a 3 ERA, just 6 innings in the show so far. He's been at AAA Charlotte along with the Dodgers this season.
Yeah, currently on the Dodgers and part of that bullpen. He's made some appearances here with Los Angeles. He made his major league debut with the Milwaukee Brewers last year in 2023 before transitioning. That currently has a 3 ERA and just 6 innings of work with the Dodgers. But Gus Varland, a reliever, as now we transition to the other Varland, and that's Louis Varland.
Yeah, Louis Varland as well. And you talk about the brothers. That's so cool. Two brothers to be in the show, both from the same Division II. And you want to talk about ERA, Robert, just to wrap up Gus. He had a 104 ERA in his final year at Concordia St. Paul. So that'll get you noticed for sure. And now we getting a look at Louis Varland, like we mentioned, 2019 15th rounder, another guy with the Minnesota Twins. They love those D2 arms, and a guy who obviously played in Minnesota for Concordia University in St. Paul, Minnesota. That was from 2017 to 2019. And he's had 6 games this year, 26 innings under his belt, 6.58 ERA. But, yeah, that was a pretty good Concordia team when those guys were on the squad, and he's another guy who really just was impressive during his time there. He had a 1.41 ERA in 44 innings in 2018 as a 20-year-old over there in the NSIC.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because Gus made his major league debut a year prior to, Louis made his major league debut a year prior to Gus debuting in 2022, making 5 starts during 26 innings with a 3.81 ERA. Currently a 6.58 ERA in 26 innings for Mr. Louis. As now we go to the GLVC, and we'll talk about a man who's a bit of a journeyman, but still Minnesota Twins related. And we're going to talk about Trevor Richards out of Drury.
Yeah, Trevor Richards, a kid from the east side of St. Louis area, went to Drury down in Springfield, Missouri, and enjoyed a really impressive college career. He finished his career with 23 wins, 272 innings, and overall a sub-3 ERA throughout 4 seasons at Drury. And then you're right, he had a crazy journey. He was in the Frontier League out of college with the Gateway Grizzlies, and then worked his way to get signed and get into independent baseball. Look at the Baseball Reference page. He's had a lot of stops, as you can see. And so for him, that's a lot of stick-to-itiveness. And ultimately, this season, he's been with the Blue Jays and the Twins, 55 innings and a 4.91 ERA so far this season after the 2012 to 2015 seasons with the Panthers of Drury. And he's played for a lot of different teams, right, as you can see.
Yeah, he sure has. When we go over to his overview and talk of, his major league career, started with the Marlins as a starter in 2018, and now he's been pretty much an exclusive reliever, part of that Toronto team, in that bullpen as well. And now currently with the Twins bullpen, as they're, again, trying to vie for a wild card spot. So now we go to our next player, and that's a guy by the name of Matt Festa, who played at not only 1, but 2 different major league, or not 2 different Division II programs.
Yeah, Matt Festa, he was selected in the 2016 7th round. He's played in the Seattle and New York Mets organization. He played at East Stroudsburg University, but he ended his career there. He started at Dominican in New York CACC school, and then went to the PSAC and played at East Stroudsburg from 2014 to 2016.
Yeah, a guy who was a part, you can see when you go back earlier in that 2022 postseason, pitching it out of the bullpen against Houston in that long game 3, where I believe Houston ended up sweeping him, but Festa was a key part of that bullpen. And then we go back a little bit further to see his first major league strikeout, and a guy who in his career has, done a lot of good things. And been a part of a few bullpens, with Seattle and the Mets, though he appeared in just one game with the Mets, and I believe now he's in the Rangers AAA organization as well. So Matthew Festa, as now we transition on to a bat, but we go to the Mariners, and we talk about a guy who's actually performing pretty well for Seattle, given their kind of park dimensions and things like that in his first year with Seattle, and that's a guy by the name of Luke Raley.
Yeah, Luke Raley, the pride of Lake Erie College in the GLIAC at the time, I believe, and he played for the Mariners. He's played for the Mariners this year. He's nearly been an everyday guy for them, hitting .228 this season across 98 games, and from 14 to 16, he played at Lake Erie. He was a seventh rounder in 2016. He's played with the Rays, Dodgers, and now Mariners organizations.
Yeah, and a guy who can really hit the baseball hard. You can see hitting it almost 460 feet. A guy who made his major league debut with the Los Angeles Dodgers way back in 2021. Spent 2 years with the Rays and is now currently on the Mariners, as he was a part of, if I remember correctly, he was a part of a off-season trade for the Rays to get a more infield depth with Jose Caballero. And so he goes to the Mariners and is now a key part of another team that's trying to make a postseason run. Mm-hmm. They're currently tied with the Houston Astros for first place in the AL West, as Luke Raley, a big guy, a part of it. But now we go on to the next guy, and that's a guy by the name of Frazier Ellard, who spent a few years at Lander before grad transferring, and now made his major league debut this season.
Yeah, he played for NAIA, Truett McConnell, then Lander for a few years, then Liberty. So he's had a handful of stops. He's pitched with the Chicago White Sox in 3 different games this year, an inning and 2/3 so far. And like you said, he's finally getting the opportunity to crack the show here this season.
Yeah, a guy who is a very, very big guy, 6'4", 220, and maybe he can be a key part of the White Sox bullpen if they seem to turn it around in future years. He could possibly be a key part of that bullpen as we go on to the next player, and that's a guy who has performed very well for the Nationals. He got injured, then he went on a rehab assignment recently, but then aggravated said injury and is now not going to play. But he was at a Division II school and is now a Division I school, and that's Lemoyne, and the pitcher is Josiah Gray.
Gray, I mean, he is a very recognizable name. He had a fantastic he kind of broke out, what was it, last year when he had a 3.91 ERA. Although a losing record, he was fantastic, made 30 starts. Like you mentioned, though, the same fortunes haven't been there this season with him because the opening day starter for the Nationals, the guy they expected to be that guy, well, the Washington Nationals don't get that much production from him this year because of the injury, and so he's been on the shelf with that. And but Josiah Gray certainly had that massive breakout season last year, and a guy who was very highly touted coming out of Lemoyne. He was a second rounder, and we don't have. I know Staumont was a second rounder. You don't see that a lot. You have a handful of them on this list, but to be drafted that high and live up to those expectations out of Lemoyne and Syracuse, New York, good for Josiah Gray, and hopefully he can get back to it. Formerly playing in the NE10 conference from 2016 to 2018.
Yeah. And hopefully he can get back to it, as he started his career with the Los Angeles Dodgers, if you do remember that. And he was a part of I believe he was a part of a very, very big trade, which was that trade to get the Nationals to trade away Max Scherzer and trade Turner to the Dodgers, and Gray was ultimately on that other side going to the Nationals. And, a guy who can definitely get a lot of strikeouts and perform at a very high level. So we'll see what remains there in 2025, as it seems like his 2024 season has been shut down, as we now go to the next guy in another team where they were a Division II school when he played, but now they're up to the Division I ranks. Not only that, they were actually a different conference than what they were when they left Division II, and that's Jeff Hartlud from Lindenwood.
Yeah, he played in the MIAA at the time, and from 2014 to 2016, enjoyed a good career at Lindenwood. Hartley is a guy with the Rockies this year, 9 innings so far, and has got a little bit of action in that Colorado pen, a 29th rounder back in 2016. He's played for Pittsburgh, the Mets, Miami, and Colorado's organizations, and getting that chance. He was actually selected a couple of different times. He was drafted in 15 and 16 out of Lindenwood. He was drafted in 15 from Lindenwood in the 37th round, then the 29th round in 2016 from the Lions of Lindenwood, who are now a Division I school.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, he was drafted in 2015 by the Mets and then drafted in 2016 by the Pirates. He played for both of those teams in his debut in 2021. As we now continue on to a guy who was a key cog of a national championship Lynn team back in 2009, and a guy who's been a big reliever for his team in the postseason, and that's a guy by the name of Tommy Kinley.
Yeah, that's you talk about what he's been able to do, and another guy that was very highly touted, and why wouldn't you be if you brought a team a national title at the Division II ranks, a 5th rounder back in 2010. He's been a part of Colorado, the Chicago White Sox, the Dodgers, and now the New York Yankees, as you see the highlights there. But, man, he brought Lynn a lot of success, and Kinley from 2008 to 2010 certainly made his mark there. And, well, he's pitched pretty well in his time with the Yankees as well this season, a 2.10 ERA and 25 2/3.
And, yeah, a guy who's making a second stint with the Yankees. You can kind of see some of these performances with other teams in the postseason. Here he is, all the way back in 2017, striking out a guy like, 2019, striking out a guy like Yordan Alvarez. So a guy who's been in the league for quite a while and is performing at a high level. And speaking of performing at a high level, a guy who was dealt at the deadline and is now a part of the Kansas City Royals bullpen. That's a guy by the name of Lucas Erceg.
Yeah, Lucas Erceg. He is an interesting story, just a very talented athlete. When you look at him, he was a 2nd rounder in 2016. Like you detailed, he's played with Oakland and Kansas City now. Played at Menlo College in Atherton, California. He started playing in the Pac-12 from 2014 and 2015. Then in 2016, went to Menlo, and with the Ace and Royals combined this year, he's got 40 2/3 tossed and a 3.32 ERA. Somebody that when he was playing in the NCAA level, he hit over 300 back in 2015 in the Pac-12. He was a really, really good hitter, but obviously transitioned to being primarily just an arm in the professional ranks. He did have a handful of at-bats, though, in AAA and AA throughout the minor leagues, but they kind of noticed, hey, he's ultimately going to be a pitcher. But, throughout the minors, he still has had 1,700 at-bats. So he's kind of a little bit of a two-way action guy, but primarily an arm in the big leagues.
Yeah, because the funny thing with Erceg is, like, Menlo, they're now a Division II school. At the time in 2016, they were an NAIA program. He was a 2nd-round draft pick. He was drafted as a bat. And then they realized, hey, this guy can kind of throw. So there's video of him hitting a home run in spring training as a bat. With the Brewers organization, they wanted him to be an outfielder. And then he goes to Oakland and they think, hey, I think you could probably pitch well. And you saw there in some of his outings, he's up to 99 miles per hour. So I think that panned out for him, and his career will definitely pay dividends with that. As now we go to a guy who career is now paying dividends in terms of, he made it back to the major leagues. He spent a couple of years outside of the major leagues, and now he's back in the major leagues, and that's a guy by the name of Dan Altavilla.
Yeah, played from 2012 to 2014 at Mercyhurst, and like you see it there with Kansas City, this season 3 2/3 tossed, and he's been able to make a little bit of action here with Kansas City, but getting back to the big, certainly big for him, and somebody that certainly was expected to be a guy after going in the 5th round back in 2014, and certainly being pretty decorated at Mercyhurst when he had, wait for it, a .86 ERA as a 19-year-old in his first year with Mercyhurst, and went on to have a nice summer on the Cape Cod League, and that ultimately got him noticed to go in the 5th round of the 2014 Major League Baseball draft.
Yeah, and it makes it interesting. There's video of him all the way back in 2017 making his major league, or excuse me, 2015 making his major league debut with the Seattle Mariners. Spent 2 years with the Padres in 2020 and 2021. Ultimately, didn't get opportunities to play at the major league level in 22 and 23, but made his way back here in 2024, pitching in 3 2/3 innings. And now Mercyhurst, now a Division I school, but now we're going to go back to the state of Pennsylvania and talk about 2 Millersville players. And first, we'll talk about a guy by the name of Tim Mesa.
Yeah, Tim Mesa, 2011 to 2013, really. You talk about how Millersville's been so successful, and these next two guys that we're going to talk about, current big leaguers, not to say that they started the trend of success, but it felt like those 2 guys really were helpful in putting Millersville on the map as the Division II community knows them today, being a staple in the postseason. And for Mesa, he was a 2013 12th rounder picked by Toronto, and pitched from 2011 to 2013 with them, and an 8.03 ERA this season, and just limited action with the Blue Jays.
Yeah, and big part of that postseason and getting guys out and huge. And he's spent his entire career with Toronto. So he started in 2017, and now it's in his 7th season in the major leagues. He didn't play in 2020. And is a big part of that Toronto bullpen. Now, they have a bit of a down year this year, but he will definitely be part of it going into 2025, as there's some video of him, trekking out J.P. Crawford in the postseason, succeeding in last year's postseason. As we transition now to the other Millersville player who also had a lot of success in the postseason, and that's a guy by the name of Chas McCormick.
Yeah, it was really a big part of that Millersville run from 2014 to 2017. So from, 2011 to then 2017, that run for Millersville, and then obviously continuing to this day, they have 2 big leaguers that are a part of that. And he played in the PSAC from 14 to 17 with the Astros this year. He's played in 70 games. Hitting a little bit above 200, but a guy who, like you said, he's had some big moments in the big leagues, and after going in the 21st round back in 2017, he's made an impact at the major league level, and that's pretty cool to see for Mr. McCormick.
Yeah, a guy who can perform at a high level and has done that, quite a bit. You'll see some of his big home runs so far this season, as well as perform at a high level in the postseason with some of the video that will be coming up here shortly. And, what he did in 2022 when the Astros ultimately won the World Series. He was a big part of that, but a lot of, making great plays as well was a big part of Chaz McCormick's game, a guy who could hit at such a high level at Millersville. You know he did that. He almost hit 401 years. Now he transitioned on to a guy who played at 2 Division II schools, and that's a guy by the name of Zach Kelly.
Yeah, Zach Kelly, somebody in the playing for Concord first. Then he played for Newberry in 2016 and 2017. And he's been big for the Red Sox this year. 4-1 record with a 2.49 ERA and 43 1/3. So Zach Kelly has found his way to the big leagues. And it looks like if he continues to throw like this, he'll find a way to stay there for some time with really impressive numbers with the Red Sox this season.
Yeah, really impressive numbers, a 2.49 ERA, big part why the Red Sox are where they're at and, vying for a postseason spot here as we continue on into the postseason. As he started his career, he was an undrafted free agent with the Oakland Athletics. Then he goes to the Angels, gets released by them, and then in December 2020 signs with the Red Sox, ultimately makes a Major League appearance in 2022. As we go to the next player, and that's a guy who has a lot of highlights and a well-known name, especially in St. Louis Cardinals realms, and that's a guy by the name of Ryan Helsley.
Yeah, the Cardinals, they have a couple of really prominent Division II pitchers currently on their staff playing big roles for them. And Ryan Helsley, perhaps nobody playing a bigger role than him. He's been pretty lights out for the Cardinals, a multi-time All-Star, and out of the back end of their bullpen after getting drafted in the 2015 fifth round out of Northeastern State University. He ultimately has gone with the Cardinals this year, a 2.72 ERA, 4-4 record, and he had a tremendous start to this season. He's enjoyed a really nice last few years. He's known for the fastball that can register triple digits, and out of Northeastern State, he certainly represented that program at a pretty high level. And again, after having a 2.45 ERA last season with 14 saves, he's got 36 more this year. So he's been pretty good in helping the St. Louis Cardinals win some ball games.
Yeah, he's had a save streak. He's been named NL Reliever of the Month twice this month. You can see there, or twice this season, I should say. And a guy, like you said, run it up. Last year, he got a fastball up to 104 miles per hour, and he was a bit of a two-way player at Northeastern State. As now we go to the other St. Louis Cardinal player from a Division II, or excuse me, not quite yet. We didn't skip him. So we go to now the Notre Dame College, a school that's now unfortunately defunct, and a guy who was dealt at the deadline but has been a key part of the Miami Marlins bullpen when they made the postseason last year, and is now a part of the San Diego Padres bullpen, and that's Tanner Scott.
Yeah, Tanner Scott playing for, like you mentioned, Notre Dame back in 2013. That's Notre Dame, Ohio. Funny enough, both Notre Dames don't have homes, though. They were a D2 independent as well. Now, of course, the school just closed down, and he's played for the Marlins and Padres this year. Overall, though, how fantastic has he been this year? A 1.49 ERA through 48 1/3 across action with the Marlins and the Padres this year. Tanner Scott's been nasty, and he's really good. One of the better lefty arms in the big leagues, really.
Yeah, and you see video of his first career strikeout all the way back, I believe, in 2018 with the Baltimore Orioles, or excuse me, 2017. And a guy who performed at such a high level, like you said, that 1.49 ERA, and was traded to the Padres. The Padres think, hey, he'll be a key contributor to this postseason run, as they're holding on to one of those three wild card spots. And speaking of wild card spots, let's talk about a team like the New York Mets, who's also in that contention. And they have a guy who is probably the most recognized Division II name, and that's a guy by the name of J.D. Martinez.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's been known. He's had some great stretches in his career as a major leaguer. I would agree, probably the most recognizable name, certainly the most recognizable bat on this list, and out of Nova Southeastern University. And they have a couple of pretty good players on this list that we're about to get to talk about. He spent from 2007 to 2009 at Nova Southeastern, and he's played for the New York Mets this year, .259 batting average this season. But all in all, man, he has had some incredible years in his career. I mean, he's a World Series champion back in 2018, 3 Silver Sluggers. I mean, he's a 6-time All-Star, and pretty crazy journey for him because he was drafted out of high school. Then he was drafted out of Nova Southeastern after the 2009 season, where he had a fantastic career there. And he certainly represented Nova at a really high level because obviously they were really good when he was there.
Yeah, and a guy who does have a World Series ring under his belt, winning a World Series title with the Boston Red Sox all the way back in 2018. He started his career in 2011 with the Houston Astros, and then he goes to the Tigers, performs well there, but then performs extremely well for Arizona before getting back-to-back All-Stars with the Red Sox. 4 in his 5 years, he's an All-Star with the Red Sox, an All-Star with the Dodgers, now currently 36-year-old, currently on the Mets, as, again, they are trying to vie for a postseason spot. And now we go back to the Cardinals, and we talk about the guy that's been a key part of their rotation since 2018, and a guy who had a very interesting career arc to get to where he's at now, and that's Miles Mikolas.
Very interesting. He had to go overseas to pitch, and Miles Mikolas, another guy who spent time at Nova Southeastern as well. From the same time J.D. Martinez was there, Miles Mikolas was there, so you can imagine how good that Nova Southeastern team was, and obviously a program that has won national championships, and a program that produces big league talent. And Miles Mikolas, another one of those, a guy in 2009, he was drafted in the 7th round by the Padres out of Nova Southeastern, and somebody who has made 2 All-Star teams in his career, and like you mentioned, has been a part of the Cardinals rotation for the last handful of seasons.
Yeah, a guy who has continually been a key part of that Cardinals rotation, dating all the way back, again, to 2018. But yeah, his career arc, he started with the Padres in 2012, and he pitched for the Rangers in 2014. Went to Japan for a few years before returning to the Cardinals returning the MLB to the Cardinals in 2018, where he went 18-4 in 200 innings and was an All-Star that year. He had another All-Star nod in 2022, and now he's currently 8-9 with a 5.12 ERA as the Cardinals are fighting for a postseason spot. As now we go to the next player, and a guy that is pitching for the biggest rival of the Cardinals, and that's a guy in Julian Merriweather, who pitched at Oklahoma Baptist when they were in NAIA school, now a Division II school.
Yeah, and he's gotten a little bit of action with the Cubs this year. Julian Merriweather was played at Skyline College, then went to Oklahoma Baptist in 2014, like you mentioned, an NAIA school at the time, was a 2014 5th-rounder, played for the Toronto organization before now enjoying some time in the show this year with the Cubs.
Yeah, a guy who started his career with Toronto in 2020 during that shortened season. Then he went to the Cubs last year for 72 innings and struck out 98 batters with a 5.01 record and a 3.38 ERA with the Cubs last year. Now he's just thrown 9 innings with the Cubs this year and 11 strikeouts with a 4 ERA. As now we go to a guy who's made his major league debut not that entirely long ago, but a new guy, and we're going to the MIAA and talking about a guy like Spencer Bivens from Rogers State.
Yeah, Spencer Bivens playing in Claremore, Oklahoma. He was really impressive for them in 2017 and 2018. He's been good for the Giants this year. 2-1 with a 1.99 ERA and 22 2/3 innings pitched this season. He's been good for a Giants team that I feel like has surprised some people this year. But the 30-year-old is somebody that, well, you look at the past to get to the big leagues and how people ultimately do that. And for him from Rogers State, not getting drafted, but finding a way to crack into affiliated baseball and now ultimately to the major leagues here this season, pretty good. And in his final year at Rogers State, 13 starts, 6 complete games, and a 2.37 ERA.
Yeah, and I mean, seeing what he can do this year, especially seeing what he did against Shohei Ohtani. I mean, look at that. Getting 3 whiffs and getting 2 strikeouts against a hitter like Shohei Ohtani. I mean, it makes for a good pitcher in any way, shape, form. And, yeah, his 1.99 ERA is definitely standing out in 22 2/3 innings. Now we go from Rogers State to San Francisco State, and a guy who only pitched 1 inning for San Francisco State in 2015, but was drafted out of the College of the Canyons, a junior college, and that's Jacob Lopez.
Yeah, Jacob Lopez, pretty interesting. Playing for the Rays this year. He's thrown 5 1/3, 8.44 ERA. Played at San Fran State in the CCAA back in 2015. And just has been with the Rays, but certainly, like you mentioned, was drafted by the Giants after playing for San Fran State in 2018 from the College of the Canyons, like you mentioned, but also played at San Fran State. And really interestingly enough, didn't have a ton of action there, only pitched a game before now finding his way to the major leagues, and he's been playing in the bigs. The last season is when he ultimately cracked the show, and now he's been up here this year as well.
Yeah, 7 total appearances with the Rays, 17 2/3 innings major league career-wise. Mostly a lefty specialist in some way, shape, form. I know nowadays that really doesn't exist that much, but 7 appearances with the Rays in his major league career. As we go to the next player, a guy that can really perform and was actually named the July Player of the Month and was a Gold Glover last year, and that's a guy by the name of Brenton Doyle.
Yeah, Brenton Doyle, 4th rounder back in 2019 from Shepherd University. And from 2017 to 2019 at Shepherd, a lot of people took notice of him. And a guy, like you mentioned, glove is great, bat pretty solid as well. In 110 games this year, he's hitting 264.
Yeah, and I mean, a guy who was the player of the month. He had 11 home runs last month in July, and now he's up to 19 on the season. He has 21 stolen bases. Never really displayed that kind of power with Shepherd, who was then in the Mountain East Conference when he played there. But then again, those parts don't typically scream power, but being able to play in Colorado definitely helps a lot. And man, he can make some highlight plays, as you can see right here, what he can do to make plays in center field, and very deservingly of that Gold Glove award. And maybe if then he can get a back-to-back Gold Glove award, definitely something to follow along at the end of the season. And speaking of follow along at the end of the season, a guy with a lot of experience, and that's a guy by the name of Scott Alexander, who's pitched quite some time here in the major leagues as well.
Yeah, and he played at Sonoma State. He's played for 4 different big league organizations, and he started at Pepperdine, was there from 2008 and 2009, and then in 2010 went to Sonoma State. And with the A's this year, he's got a 2.88 ERA in 25 innings.
And that's pretty neat. And, he was a key contributor there for the Dodgers in the postseason not too long ago, back in 2018. He was the guy that basically got Mitch Moreland out. As you start to see some clips of him pitching against Mitch Moreland here in the 2018 World Series. But started his career with the Royals all the way back in 2015. We're going to the Dodgers in 2018. Spent 2 years there. The last 2 years with the Giants before ultimately playing for the Oakland Athletics. So funny how that works, how he was a California guy, went to California high school, colleges, and now his last 7 years have all been with teams in the state of California.
Yeah, 10 years in the bigs.
10 years in the bigs as we go to our next guy. And the guy out of New Haven in the NE10, and that's a guy by the name of Josh Walker.
Oh, yeah, Josh Walker. Didn't start there. Started at South Florida, then went to New Haven and spent a couple of successful seasons in the NE10. And this season with the Mets in 10 games has a 5.11 ERA.
Yeah, and a guy who's, again, made 10 appearances, 12 and a third. He made 14 last year with the Mets, and a part of that Mets bullpen now this year. Again, vying for a playoff spot, throws from the left side as we go to the next player. And we're going to talk about a guy who made his major league debut not that long ago, and a guy who has performed at such a high level with an ERA under 2 in his 3 starts, and that's River Ryan.
Yeah, River Ryan, you look at what he did, and, we just talked about Walker, how impressive he was being in the 37th round and getting to the show. Well, River Ryan was an 11th rounder out of UNC Pembroke, and he played there from 2017 to 2021. And he's gotten up to the show pretty quickly, like you mentioned, this year with the Dodgers cracking it, and a 1.72 ERA in limited action, just 3 games. But UNC Pembroke on the map in the show here this year, just after a couple years ago, he was playing there in the Division II ranks.
Yeah, 2017 to 2021, and now making 3 starts as part of this Dodger rotation. We knew that expectation was there. A lot of people rated him as a highly touted prospect. He finally makes his major league debut. You can see some of his pitches here in his major league debut. Again, those 3 starts, the 1.72 ERA, and he got his first win as we go to our next guy, and a guy that pitched at USC Aiken. And that's a guy by the name of Mitch Spence.
Yeah, Big Spence. He pitched from 2017 to 2019 at USC Aiken in the Peach Belt Conference. He's pitched a lot this year for the A's, 100 innings logged so far this season, a 4.4 ERA, an even record of 7-7, and a 10th rounder back in the 2019 draft.
Yeah, a guy who made his major league debut this season. He made 11 relief appearances before getting inserted into the rotation. And, man, he's performed at such a high level for the Athletics. A 4.4 ERA. And like you said, in those 100 innings with his first experience being with Oakland, he was drafted by the Yankees in the 10th round. Ultimately, makes his way out to Oakland. I wonder if it was a signing or a trade or things along that lines, but it doesn't look like that was the case. As he was actually taken by the A's in the Rule 5 draft in the offseason. So Mitch Spence making the best of it. Speaking of making the best of it, someone who I had the pleasure of seeing his major league debut with the Chicago White Sox, and that's a guy who pitched for the defending national champions,
making his major
Tampa
league
Spartans,
debut here with the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, and he was great at Tampa from 2017 to 2021. So a guy that, correct me if I'm wrong, playing in the show this year, and he still played with a guy that was on the Tampa team this year in E.J. Cumbo, I believe, right? For a year in 2021.
That's correct.
So, that's pretty cool to see his descent to the show be rather quick, and he's throwing 31 innings this year with the White Sox, and good for Jordan Leisure. And again, like you said, you were there when he was ultimately getting that honor to make a big league career starting this season.
Yeah, and it was a great outing. He scored a swing in that outing. So, hey, it was glad to see it. But also, speaking of glad and speaking of White Sox in Tampa, other Tampa Spartan, former Tampa Spartan, currently playing for the White Sox as well, is Sammy Peralta, a left-handed pitcher.
Yeah, he was a JUCO kid in 17, and then in 18 and 19 played with Tampa on obviously he played for Tampa. You're probably on some good teams, and he certainly was. And he has 10 2/3 toss for this year across 7 appearances for the White Sox. And Sammy Peralta, an 18th rounder back in 2019.
Yeah, and made his major league debut last year and is now back up in the major leagues. I believe he's currently up in the major leagues. 7 appearances, 10 2/3, 5.06 ERA. In this season, he had a 4.05 ERA in 20 innings last season. As 2 Tampa guys out of the bullpen pitching for the Chicago White Sox as we go to our next player and a guy who's pretty much been at the back end of the bullpen. And crazy to think, just 5 years ago, he was like an extra reliever for the Washington Nationals, who won the World Series that year. And that's a guy by the name of Tanner Rainey.
Oh yeah, 2019 World Series champ Tanner Rainey, highly touted for sure. I mean, he was the second rounder back in 2015, drafted by the Reds out of West Alabama. He's a kid from Louisiana and actually started his career at Southeastern Louisiana before transitioning his college career to Livingston, Alabama, where he played at the University of West Alabama. But the Rain Man, he's a World Series champion, 31-year-old now, 7 major league seasons, and he's got 33 innings under his belt this season with Washington.
Yeah, and you can see some of his highlights all the way back in 2019. I would say he was basically the mop-up guy all the way back in 2019, and now is the main reliever. As he can also throw 100+, as you saw there. But very, very interesting to see that career arc, and a guy who started with his career with the Reds. You saw that strikeout earlier if you're watching the video, and now is currently a Washington National. And now we go to a guy who I believe also has made his major league debut this season. No, excuse me, I am wrong. He played a bit last season, but the guy who played at West Georgia, who's now a Division I school, but were Division II schools in the past, that is Cade Marlowe.
Yeah, you look at Cade Marlowe, and 20th rounder back in 2019 to play with the Mariners, and again, West Georgia is where he pitched. And from 2016 to 2018, 250 average this year in 8 games with Seattle, as you see some highlights of him.
Yeah, a guy who, again, spent those years with West Georgia and now performing Seattle. He's only played in 8 games and 9 plate appearances, but Cade Marlowe making best of his opportunities there in the big leagues with the Seattle Mariners. And now we go to our next player and talk about a guy who's definitely performed at a high level there for the Houston Astros, and performed at a high level with the Wayne State Warriors in Michigan, and that's Hunter Brown.
Yeah, and I know nobody cares, but this was another guy that I saw pretty up close and intimate and multiple times when he was playing with Wayne State. On one occasion, Robert, since I wasn't a player that was good enough to be on postseason rosters, but I'd still travel with the team. My junior year, I believe, I was sitting in the stands on the radar gun. And so he was pitching, and typically you're just tracking, right, and you're writing it down. But on this occasion, I was sitting next to about 20 other guys with briefcases and radar guns and clipboards and stopwatches. And he was 96 to 99 in this Division II regional. Very, very just striking because he certainly skyrocketed his velocity during his career at Wayne State. And, well, it's helped because he's been a big part of the Houston Astros organization after spending time in Detroit, Michigan from 2017 to 2019 in college at Wayne State. He's got a 3.93 ERA, 9-7 record in 122 innings, been toward the front of that Astros rotation.
Yeah, I mean, that's very a guy who definitely has been a part of this Astros rotation, performed at a high level, and is able to get the outs that he has been with what he's done in his 3 years, especially at the major league level. As we lost, hold on. Let's get those highlights back up for you. If you're watching video, we apologize for that. But Hunter Brown, in his third year with Houston, he had a .89 ERA in 20 innings in 2022. He made his debut, as now just a part of that rotation. As again, we're tied with the Mariners for first place in the AL West. And we'll go to our second to last player, which is Joey Wendell, who played for Westchester in the PSAC and spent some time with the New York Mets before ultimately getting released. And I believe he is.
Yeah, I mean, Wendell, Robert, he was a sixth rounder drafted by Cleveland back in 2012 from Westchester. And he's been an all-star in his career, and he's put together now 9 major league seasons, and he's been playing with the New York Mets this year.
Yeah, played a bit with the New York Mets. You could see some of those highlights there, but was also a big part of those Rays teams, especially in 2020. He was a big part of that, being in the postseason, performing at such a high level, the way that he did with some big hits. He also was an all-star in 2021, and he was videoed his first major league hit, as well as we go to our last guy who was part of the Westmont program. That was when they were in NAIA program, and that's a man by the name of Michael Stefanik.
Yeah, when they were out in the GSAC NAIA, now a D2 Westmont, shout out to them, now postseason eligible from 2017 to 2018, though. He performed at Westmont, and this year, he's hitting above 300 in just 15 games with Los Angeles. As you see him get a knock right there if you're watching on video.
Yeah, his first major league knock there, and what makes his story kind of interesting, at the NAIA level, and then playing is in the minor leagues, he had a 61-game hitting streak, which is very impressive there, no matter what level you play at. So now he's performing at a high level there in the major leagues, and that'll wrap up our list of the 50 guys who have played either at a previous or current Division II. He's now played at least one game in the major leagues in 2024. So this was exciting to kind of go through with you and talk about with you because, man, you don't really think about all the guys that are at Division II school and now playing here. And here we are showing you all 50 players who've made an appearance in 2024 this season through August 7th.
Yeah, it shows that if you have the talent, you're going to be noticed at any level. Obviously, the Division II number of players isn't going to be as high as obviously Division I or other levels, but it shows that there are some pretty accomplished big leaguers, guys who have made a living playing baseball that played at the Division II level, and maybe that's some encouragement for any coaches or players watching, knowing that, hey, this is possible, and if you're good, they'll find you, and that's something to continue to remember as well, but also cool to highlight for us, showing the excellence of Division II baseball, putting a light on that also.
Yeah, and if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to hit that like button, subscribe wherever, if you're on podcasts, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast, or like and subscribe on our YouTube channel as well. Find us on social media at BIVII Baseball, B2 Baseball, and our website, BIVIIBaseball.com. Thank you, everyone who tuned in, and we hope you have a wonderful day.